My husband started openly flirting with waitresses because his bachelor friend said making me jealous would reignite our passion. When I finally confronted him after 6 months, he said, "See, you do care," so I served him divorce papers, and his friends lost their marriages too after their wives found out. I never thought my marriage would end because my husband took relationship advice from men who had never successfully maintained a long-term relationship. But here we are. I am Lauren, 31 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a solid marriage with my husband Derek, 33 We had been together for 8 years, married for 5, and while we had hit a comfortable routine like most couples do, I never imagined that comfort would be weaponized against me. Derek and I met at a mutual friend's birthday party when I was 23. He was charming, attentive, and genuinely interested in my work as a graphic designer. We bonded over our shared love of hiking and terrible action movies. Our relationship progressed naturally. We moved in together after a year, got engaged at 2 years, and married at 3 years. For the first few years of marriage, everything felt easy and right. We had our routines. Sunday mornings were for farmers market runs and brunch. Wednesday nights were date nights, even if that just meant ordering takeout and watching a movie at home. We supported each other's careers, split household duties fairly, and genuinely enjoyed spending time together. Our friends often commented on how well-matched we were, how comfortable we seemed with each other. Looking back now, I realize that comfort was seen as a problem by some people in Derek's life. Specifically, his 3 closest friends from college, Troy, 34 Brandon, 32 and Kyle, 35 All 3 were perpetually single, cycling through relationships that never lasted more than a few months. They spent their weekends at bars, their money on expensive cars and gadgets, and their time complaining about how modern women had impossible standards. I had never particularly liked Derek's friendship with these 3. They brought out a competitive, almost juvenile side of him that clashed with the mature, thoughtful man I had married. But Derek had known them since freshman year of college, and I understood that long-term friendships were important. I never asked him to choose between us. I just quietly declined most group hangouts and encouraged him to see them on his own. The change in Derek's behavior started about 6 months ago, right after a guys' weekend in Las Vegas. Derek came back from that trip different. He was more attentive to his appearance, spending extra time at the gym and buying new clothes. At first, I thought maybe the trip had just motivated him to take better care of himself. I even complimented his new workout routine and the confidence boost it seemed to give him. But then things got weird. We went to dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant the weekend after his Vegas trip. Our server was a young woman named Emma, probably in her early 20s. Throughout the meal, Derek was overly friendly with her. He asked about her day, complimented her earrings, and maintained eye contact that lasted just a beat too long. When she brought our dessert, he smiled at her and said the tiramisu looked almost as sweet as she did. I was stunned. In 8 years together, Derek had never behaved this way. I asked him about it on the drive home, keeping my voice calm and curious rather than accusatory. He laughed it off, saying he was just being friendly and that I was being too sensitive. He said the server was probably working hard for tips and his friendliness might have made her night better. It sounded reasonable enough that I pushed my discomfort aside. But it kept happening. At a coffee shop, he chatted up the barista about her tattoos, leaning across the counter in a way that felt too intimate. At a work happy hour I attended with him, he spent most of the evening talking to a young woman from accounting, laughing loudly at her jokes and touching her arm while speaking. At my sister's engagement party, he complimented the catering staff so effusively that my mother pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay in our marriage. Each time I brought it up to Derek, he had a ready explanation. He was just being social. He was networking at the work event. He wanted to make sure the catering staff felt appreciated. He accused me of being jealous and insecure, suggesting that maybe I needed to work on my own confidence issues rather than policing his friendly nature. The worst part was how public and obvious his behavior had become. At restaurants, he would ignore me completely while flirting with our server. At parties, he would spend hours talking to other women while I stood alone. At family gatherings, he would help other women with their coats, refill their drinks, and position himself next to them for photos while barely acknowledging my presence. I felt humiliated. Our friends noticed. My family noticed. Even strangers seemed to pick up on the weird dynamic. I overheard 2 women at a wedding talking about how sad it was that the guy in the blue suit seemed so uninterested in his wife. They were talking about Derek and me. About 3 months into this nightmare, I ran into Troy's ex-girlfriend Amanda at a yoga class. We had met a few times at group events years ago but had never been close. She approached me after class, looking uncomfortable but determined. She asked if we could grab coffee, saying she needed to tell me something. Over lattes, Amanda explained that Troy had pulled similar behavior with her about a year ago. He had suddenly started flirting with other women in front of her, becoming increasingly bold and disrespectful. When she finally confronted him, he had smiled and said he was just trying to keep things exciting, that she had gotten too comfortable. She broke up with him on the spot, but the experience had been humiliating and confusing. She wanted to warn me in case Derek was following some kind of playbook. Her warning confirmed what I had been suspecting. This behavior was not spontaneous or natural for Derek. It was calculated. He was following advice from someone, and I was willing to bet that someone was Troy, Brandon, or Kyle. I decided to handle this strategically rather than emotionally. I started documenting everything. I kept a detailed journal on my laptop with dates, locations, and descriptions of Derek's behavior. When we went out, I asked friends to come along and serve as witnesses. I secretly recorded several of our conversations where he dismissed my concerns and called me jealous or insecure. I also consulted with a divorce attorney. I wanted to understand my rights and options. The attorney, Patricia, was sympathetic and thorough. She explained how asset division would work, what I could expect from the process, and how documentation of emotional abuse could support my case. I did not commit to anything, but I wanted to be prepared. At home, I stopped confronting Derek about his behavior. I acted like everything was fine. I smiled at dinners while he flirted with servers. I stayed calm at parties while he ignored me. I think my lack of reaction frustrated him because his behavior became even more obvious, as if he was trying to provoke a bigger response from me. 4 months in, I discovered the full truth about where Derek's behavior was coming from. I was looking for a document on our shared laptop when I found a group chat thread between Derek, Troy, Brandon, and Kyle. The chat was called Brothers Before Vows, and reading through it made me physically ill. The conversation had started during their Vegas trip. Troy had apparently been ranting about how modern marriages fail because wives get too comfortable and stop putting in effort. He said women need to be kept on their toes, reminded that their husbands have options. Brandon agreed, saying his last girlfriend had gotten complacent until he started talking to other women, and suddenly she was attentive again. Kyle shared some article from a pickup artist website about maintaining attraction through strategic jealousy. Then they had all turned their attention to Derek. Troy had written that Derek seemed bored in his marriage, that I had gotten too comfortable. He said Derek needed to remind me that he was desirable to other women, that a little jealousy would reignite our passion. Brandon had added that complacent wives needed wake-up calls. Kyle had sent a detailed plan: start small with friendly attention to other women, escalate to obvious flirting, maintain the behavior until I reacted strongly, then Derek could swoop in as the solution to the problem he had created. Derek's responses in the chat made my stomach turn. He had been documenting his flirting episodes like they were experiments. He wrote about how I had seemed uncomfortable after the Italian restaurant incident but had not made a scene. He celebrated when my mother had pulled me aside at my sister's party, seeing it as progress. He analyzed my reactions like I was a subject in a study rather than his wife. The most recent messages in the chat were from the week before. Derek had written that the plan was not working as well as expected because I had stopped reacting. Troy had suggested escalating further. Brandon had recommended that Derek start mentioning other women by name, comparing me unfavorably to them. Kyle had advised patience, saying I was probably seething inside and would eventually explode. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every piece of advice, every celebration of my humiliation. I sent them all to my personal email and to Patricia, my attorney. Then I did something else. I found the social media profiles for Troy's current girlfriend, Brandon's fiancée, and Kyle's long-term girlfriend. I did not contact them yet, but I saved their information for later. 2 weeks ago, Derek apparently decided it was time to force the confrontation. We were at a restaurant celebrating our 5-year wedding anniversary. Our server was a friendly young woman who was clearly just doing her job. Derek turned on the charm at maximum volume. He complimented her smile, her hair, her dress. He asked personal questions about her life and interests. He touched her hand when she set down his drink. He completely ignored me. I sat there calmly, eating my overpriced pasta and watching my husband make a fool of himself. Other diners were staring. The server looked increasingly uncomfortable. I said nothing. When we got home, Derek seemed frustrated that I had not reacted. He started the conversation himself, asking if I had noticed how friendly the server had been with him. I replied calmly that I had noticed his behavior, yes. He smiled, a triumphant expression that made my skin crawl, and said that at least I still cared enough to notice. He said he could tell I was jealous even though I was trying to hide it. Then he said those words that sealed his fate: "See, you do care." My plan worked. Now we can work on getting that spark back. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I had loved for 8 years had spent 6 months deliberately humiliating me on the advice of his toxic friends. He had treated our marriage like a game, my feelings like obstacles to overcome. He thought he had won. I walked to our bedroom closet and pulled out a folder I had prepared weeks earlier. Inside were divorce papers, already filed and processed. I also had printed copies of the entire group chat thread, highlighted with dates and key quotes. I handed everything to Derek and said my attorney would be in touch about the asset division and that he had 30 days to vacate our house, which was solely in my name since I had purchased it before our marriage. Derek's face went through several rapid changes: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally panic. He started talking fast, saying I was overreacting, that it was all just harmless fun meant to help our marriage. He said he had never actually cheated, that the flirting meant nothing. He grabbed my arm and said we needed to talk this through like adults. I pulled away and told him the time for talking had ended 6 months ago when he decided to follow relationship advice from men who had never maintained successful relationships. I said I had documented everything, that I had legal counsel, and that his behavior had been witnessed by dozens of people. Then I told him about the group chat screenshots and watched his face go pale. Derek tried a different approach. He said Troy, Brandon, and Kyle had been the ones to push this plan, that he had been stupid to listen to them. He promised to cut them off completely. He begged for another chance, saying he had made a terrible mistake but that we could recover from this. He started crying, saying he loved me and could not imagine life without me. I told him he should have thought about that before spending 6 months systematically destroying my trust and publicly humiliating me. I said I was done being an experiment in his toxic masculinity project. Then I left to stay at my sister's house, leaving him alone with the divorce papers. But I was not done. I still had those screenshots and the contact information for the girlfriends of his accomplices. Update 1. The morning after I served Derek with divorce papers, I sent detailed emails to Troy's girlfriend Madison, Brandon's fiancée Jessica, and Kyle's girlfriend Nicole. I included screenshots of the entire Brothers Before Vows group chat, starting from the Vegas trip through Derek's anniversary stunt. I explained who I was, what their partners had been advising my husband to do, and how this had destroyed my marriage. I offered to answer any questions and provided my phone number. The responses came quickly. Madison called me within an hour, crying and furious. She said Troy had been acting suspicious lately, starting conversations about how she had gotten too comfortable in their relationship. She had thought he was preparing to propose, not plotting to manipulate her the way Derek had manipulated me. She said she was ending the relationship immediately and thanked me for telling her before she wasted any more time on him. Jessica's response was even more dramatic. She called me that afternoon from Brandon's apartment, where she had just confronted him with the screenshots. I could hear him in the background trying to explain and minimize his role in the group chat. Jessica was ice cold on the phone. She said she and Brandon had been planning their wedding for next May, but she was calling it off effective immediately. She said any man who would advise his friend to emotionally abuse his wife was not someone she could trust to be a husband or father. Nicole took a day to respond, but when she did, her message was thorough. She explained that she and Kyle had been together for 7 years, living together for 3. She had thought they were building toward marriage and a family. Reading the group chat had shown her a side of Kyle she had never seen: cruel, manipulative, and misogynistic. She said she was moving out by the end of the week and had already contacted a real estate agent about finding her own place. Within 48 hours of me serving Derek with divorce papers, all 3 of his best friends were single and dealing with their own relationship catastrophes. And they all knew exactly why it had happened. Troy apparently showed up at our house 2 days later, demanding to speak with me. Derek called to warn me, sounding panicked. He said Troy was furious, that I had ruined his relationship with Madison and now Troy wanted revenge. I told Derek that if Troy came near me or contacted me in any way, I would file for a restraining order and share the group chat screenshots with Troy's employer, a conservative financial firm that probably would not appreciate their senior analyst giving advice about manipulating women. Troy did not contact me, but the fallout from the exposed group chat continued to spread. Brandon's fiancée Jessica was a popular fitness instructor with a significant social media following. She posted a long statement about calling off her wedding, carefully worded but clear about the reason being her fiancé's misogynistic attitude toward women and marriage. She did not name Brandon specifically, but their mutual friends knew exactly who she was talking about. Several of Brandon's colleagues saw the post and the story spread through his office. Kyle's situation was particularly messy because he and Nicole had been living together. Nicole's parents helped her move out over a weekend while Kyle was visiting family. She left behind a printed copy of the group chat screenshots with a note that said she deserved better than someone who viewed relationships as games to be won. Kyle apparently came home to an empty apartment and a reality check. Derek kept trying to contact me. He called, texted, emailed, and even showed up at my sister's house once. Each time, he had a new angle. Sometimes he played the victim, saying his friends had pressured him into behavior that went against his true nature. Sometimes he was angry, accusing me of overreacting and destroying multiple relationships over harmless guy talk. Sometimes he was desperately apologetic, promising he had learned his lesson and would spend the rest of his life making it up to me. I responded only through my attorney. Patricia was efficient and ruthless. Because the house was in my name alone and we had no children, the divorce process was relatively straightforward. Derek was entitled to half of the assets we had accumulated during marriage, but that was mostly just savings accounts and some furniture. Patricia pushed hard on the emotional abuse angle, using my documented evidence of Derek's behavior and the group chat screenshots. The goal was to ensure Derek could not drag out the divorce or make unreasonable demands. Meanwhile, Troy, Brandon, and Kyle were all dealing with their own consequences. Troy had apparently tried to win Madison back by claiming the group chat was just harmless venting, that he had never intended for Derek to actually follow through on the advice. Madison shut him down hard, telling him that giving the advice was just as bad as executing it. She also warned her single friends about him, effectively destroying his dating prospects in their social circle. Brandon faced professional consequences when his boss, who had been planning to attend his wedding, heard through the office gossip network about why the wedding was canceled. The boss called Brandon in for a conversation about company values and workplace culture. While Brandon kept his job, he was apparently moved to a different team and passed over for a promotion he had been expecting. Kyle lost Nicole and his comfortable living situation, but he also lost his position in his recreational soccer league. Nicole had been friends with several of the other players' wives, and when she told them why she had moved out, they pressured their husbands to vote Kyle off the team. He tried to join a different league but found that his reputation had preceded him. The three men apparently blamed Derek for their problems. According to mutual friends, they felt that if Derek had just handled his marriage better, none of this would have happened. They started a new group chat without him, complaining about how women overreact to everything and share too much information with each other. They did not seem to grasp that their own actions had caused their problems. Derek found himself isolated in a way he had never experienced. His three closest friends had cut him off, blaming him for their relationship failures. His other friends had heard about what happened and were either avoiding him or openly critical of his behavior. His family was disappointed and confused. His mother called me to apologize for her son's behavior, saying she had not raised him to treat women that way. 3 weeks after I served the divorce papers, Derek sent me one final email. It was long, rambling, and desperate. He admitted that following his friend's advice had been the biggest mistake of his life. He said he had thrown away a good marriage because he had been bored and stupid. He acknowledged that the flirting had not been about reigniting passion but about feeling powerful and desired. He said losing me had shown him what he had taken for granted. The email ended with a plea. He asked if there was any way I could forgive him, any path back to reconciliation. He promised he had learned his lesson and would spend the rest of his life proving he had changed. He said he understood it, the answer was no, but he had to ask one final time. I did not respond to Derek directly. Instead, I forwarded the email to Patricia and asked her to confirm that all divorce paperwork was progressing according to schedule. She replied within an hour, everything was on track for the divorce to be finalized within 8 weeks. Update 2. 6 weeks after serving Derek with divorce papers, I learned the brothers before vows damage went deeper than I thought. Amanda reached out again, having connected with 2 other women, Sarah, who dated Kyle 3 years ago, and Michelle, who briefly dated Brandon 2 years ago. All had experienced similar manipulation patterns. Sarah said Kyle compared her unfavorably to coworkers and tested whether she really loved him by cycling between neglect and perfect boyfriend behavior. Michelle said Brandon canceled dates, then posted photos at bars with other women, later telling friends that keeping women insecure maintained the upper hand. We met for coffee and discovered a clear pattern. These men genuinely believed manipulating women through jealousy was valid relationship strategy. They had been doing this for years, cycling through women who eventually left. Amanda suggested sharing everything publicly. I hesitated until Michelle revealed Brandon was dating a 23-year-old named Kelly. We felt responsible to warn other women. We created a detailed document outlining the behavior patterns of Troy, Brandon, and Kyle. We included testimony from all 4 of us, along with the screenshots from the Brothers Before Vows group chat that I had saved. We were careful to present only factual information, direct quotes, specific incidents, and documented patterns of behavior. Nothing we included was speculation or exaggeration. Then we shared the document in a private Facebook group for women in our city, a group with over 5,000 members that served as a space for sharing recommendations and warnings about everything from bad landlords to unsafe bars. We titled it A Warning About Local Men with Documented Patterns of Manipulative Behavior and Let the Facts Speak for Themselves. The response was overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the post had been shared over 200 times. Dozens of women commented, some sharing their own experiences with these men or their friends. Several women said they had matched with Troy, Brandon, or Kyle on dating apps and were grateful for the warning before meeting them in person. Brandon's new girlfriend Kelly saw the post. She contacted Michelle directly, thanking her for the information and confirming that Brandon had already started exhibiting some of the warning signs we had documented. She ended things with him immediately. Brandon apparently tried to spin it as Kelly being influenced by bitter exes, but Kelly told him she trusted the consistent pattern from multiple sources over his explanations. The post also reached the fiancé of one of Brandon's co-workers. She showed it to her fiancé, who confirmed that Brandon had indeed been bragging at work about his manipulation tactics and advising other men to follow similar strategies. The fiancé reported this to their boss, adding to the professional consequences Brandon was already facing. Troy's situation got worse when the document reached someone at his gym. Troy had apparently been using the gym as a hunting ground, chatting up women and sometimes following them to their cars to ask for their numbers. Several women who had felt uncomfortable with his attention saw our warning and reported his behavior to gym management. Troy lost his membership and was banned from the property. Kyle faced consequences in his professional life as well. He worked as a real estate agent, and several potential clients who had seen the warning document chose other agents. One woman even left him a voicemail explaining that she could not trust someone with documented patterns of manipulating women to be honest in business dealings. Meanwhile, Derek had been trying a new approach. He had apparently started therapy and was posting about it on social media. His posts were carefully crafted to present himself as a man working on his issues and taking responsibility for his mistakes. Several mutual friends told me Derek was presenting himself as a victim of toxic masculinity who had been led astray by bad influences but was now on a redemption journey. I found this narrative offensive. Derek was not a victim. He had been a willing participant in the Brothers Before Vows group, enthusiastically documenting his manipulation of me and seeking advice on how to escalate. The group chat screenshots showed clearly that he had enjoyed the game, that he had felt powerful watching me suffer in silence. I decided Derek needed to face consequences beyond just divorce. I contacted his employer, a marketing firm that prided itself on its progressive values and commitment to respectful workplace culture. I sent HR copies of the group chat screenshots, along with an explanation of how Derek's attitudes toward women and relationships might be reflected in his workplace behavior. The HR investigation took 2 weeks. They interviewed Derek's colleagues and discovered a pattern of concerning behavior. Derek had apparently made several female co-workers uncomfortable with overly personal questions and comments about their appearance. He had never crossed the line into actionable harassment, but there had been enough informal complaints that his behavior was on HR's radar. The group chat screenshots provided context that helped HR understand Derek's mindset. Derek was not fired, but he was required to complete harassment training and was placed on a performance improvement plan. He was also moved to a different team, away from the female colleagues who had complained about him. His prospects for advancement at the company were effectively destroyed. Derek blamed me for everything. He sent me an angry email saying I had gone too far, that I was destroying his life out of spite. He said the divorce was punishment enough and that going after his career and reputation was vindictive. He threatened to sue me for defamation, though his attorney apparently told him he had no case since everything I had shared was true and documented. I responded through Patricia, my attorney, with a simple message: I was not responsible for the consequences of his own actions and words. If he was embarrassed by the group chat screenshots, he should not have written those messages. If he was facing professional consequences, he should not have behaved inappropriately toward colleagues. I was simply ensuring that the women in his life, both personal and professional, had accurate information about his character and behavior patterns. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks after I served the papers. I got the house, as expected, plus half of our joint savings. Derek had to buy out my share of his car and his retirement account. The settlement was fair, handled efficiently by our attorneys without needing to go to court. On the day the divorce was finalized, I received messages from Madison, Jessica, and Nicole. All three thanked me for exposing the group chat. Madison said she had started dating someone new, a man who treated her with genuine respect. Jessica said calling off her wedding was the best decision she had ever made. Nicole said leaving Kyle had given her the clarity to recognize she had been settling for mediocrity. Update 3. It has been 4 months since my divorce from Derek was finalized. The Brothers Before Vows exposure has had lasting consequences for everyone involved. Troy, Brandon, and Kyle have become cautionary tales in our social circles. The warning document Amanda, Sarah, Michelle, and I created has been shared so widely that these men are essentially undateable in our city. Women who search their names or profiles quickly find the documentation. Troy deleted all his dating profiles after women kept recognizing him and unmatching. He is apparently considering moving to escape his reputation. Brandon was let go from his job during restructuring after multiple female colleagues requested not to work with him. He has struggled to find new employment as word of his reputation spreads. Kyle faced unexpected family consequences. His younger sister Jenna saw the warning document and was disgusted by his behavior. When he tried to dismiss her concerns, she cut contact. Their mother sided with Jenna after seeing the group chat screenshots. Kyle lost his girlfriend, his sister, and much of his family support. Derek tried dating again 3 months ago. A woman named Allison agreed to one date but Googled him first. When she asked about his divorce on their date, Derek tried his reformed man story. Allison had researched enough to know about the group chat and ended the date early, telling a mutual friend Derek seemed sorry he got caught rather than sorry for his actions. Derek's mother told him he was no longer welcome at family gatherings until he genuinely understood his mistakes. His brother stopped speaking to him entirely. Last month, Derek, Troy, Brandon, and Kyle reconciled and started hanging out again. Having alienated everyone else, they only had each other. They started a new group chat, but now they are 4 increasingly isolated men in their 30s who burned their bridges. Their new chat is less about conquest and more about bitterness. My life improved dramatically. I landed 2 major graphic design clients, took a solo trip to Iceland, and reconnected with old friends. 3 months ago, I met Gabriel at a design conference. He is an architect with no interest in relationship games. We are building something based on respect and honest communication. My family loves him, noting how he actually listens and treats me as a partner. Amanda, Sarah, Michelle, and I still meet regularly. Amanda is engaged to someone who treats her with respect. Jessica launched her own fitness studio. Nicole returned to school and is dating someone from her program.